Hello and welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot reader, and professional witch, and today I'm talking about the color white in color magic. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. If you love the show, the best way to support it for free is by listening daily, leaving a review, and subscribing or following in your favorite podcast app. If you love the podcast and want to support it further, here are some other offers. You can join the Everyday Tarot Patreon family, where you can get an individual card pulled for you once a month live on the podcast. Or if you'd like to support the podcast further, you can get a one-time individual 5-card reading. I recently recorded an hour-long video episode for the new moon that we welcomed in on October 21st, 2025. If you missed the live, you can check out the New Moon Collective Tarot reading replay over on my YouTube channel, and I'll have the link in the show notes. As a bonus for the Queer Joy Summit that wrapped up in October, I created a Queer Coven spooky tarot spread and wanted to give the wider audience a chance to grab it even if you weren't a part of the summit. So it's Halloween and queer themed in the shape of a bat. Spread that I created for my Queer Coven spooky folks. So if you want to grab that, the link is in the show notes for the PDF there. I was recently on Kayla Moore's Connected Pleasure podcast, so you can check out my episode of Kayla's podcast where we talked all about living by the body, dreaming of land, and weaving the future. I have a link to Kayla's offer page in the show notes at connectedpleasurecoaching.com, and if you love our episode on Kayla's podcast, stay tuned because I also had Kayla on this podcast, and her episode will go out during my guests season, which will probably be the last season of 2025. And on that note, I am looking for more guests to be on the podcast. So if you're interested or know someone that might be a good fit, please fill out my form to be a guest on the podcast and I will reach out. If you want to work with me more directly and perhaps you don't live local to me, you can join my Tarot for Transformation monthly workshops that I'm kicking off in January 2026. We'll be deep diving the major arcana to discover our best selves and create a life worth living. So infuse magic and tarot into your daily life. We'll be deep diving, like I said, once a month into each of the first 12 of the major arcana cards altogether. And if this is a hit and I enjoy doing it as well as others enjoy learning, I will probably continue this in 2027 also, since only 12 cards, if I do one a month, it goes for longer than a year, as there are 22 major arcana cards. And if you don't already know, I'm a sex and relationships therapist and coach, seeing individual and relational clients virtually all over from my home office. So if you'd like to work with me one-on-one, I love working with queer, poly, and witchy clients. So if you'd like to work with someone that doesn't judge you, is witchy just like you, and helps you learn how to deal with anxiety, chronic pain or illness, communication issues, self-advocacy, and sex, head to my website and book a free consultation now to start your journey. You can do so at CamilleASaunders.com. If you've heard me talk about creating your own tarot cards and you're like, Camille, that sounds cool, but I don't have the art skills for that. Well, no worries. You can learn how to create your own tarot cards with collage. We are copy pasting in real life, cutting things out, collaging them, right? Using our glue sticks and scissors and creating art from that. So you can get my full workshop where I did an hour-long recording that has the step-by-step method, examples of the cards I've created, journaling questions, and a PDF to walk you all through it. And you can click on the link in the show notes to grab that now. And I feel like this is a great thing for winter time, when you're stuck indoors and it's dark outside. Get your craft on. If you're interested in grabbing my 2025 5-card tarot spread I created just for you, the listeners of this podcast, at the beginning of the year, you can get that by joining my newsletter list. My weekly newsletter always has the most up-to-date info on my upcoming events, presentations, musings, and info and photos of my day-to-day life. If you're local and want to meet me in person, you can check out my Let's Talk Tarot meetup group. Our next event will be celebrating the full moon as part of my full moon circle. We have one more in 2025, so you can join my colleague Izzy and I under the glow of the full moon for an evening of connection, reflection, and ritual. Oh, sorry, I touched the mic. We will meet at Thresholds Collective in Tacoma the first Sunday of the month to welcome in the full moon together. So the next date and the last full moon of 2025 is December 7th. So tickets are already available. We hope to see you there. You can find the links for any of these offers in the show notes or on my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot, in addition to the images of the cards I pull for each episode. All right, well, welcome to season 18, where I'm talking all about color magic. If you haven't listened to my other seasons yet, you can check those out. But like I said, today we're talking about color magic, and in particular, the color white. So we'll start by talking about what is white. White is the lightest color and is achromatic, or having no chroma. It's the color, right, of different objects like snow, chalk, or milk, and in a lot of ways is seen as the opposite of black. White objects fully or almost fully reflect and scatter all visible wavelengths of white. And so anything that is sort of seen that way is sort of seen as representing the whole, I would say. White has often been seen as a symbol of purity. We think of their like unicorns symbolized as like innocence or even chastity. The white lamb, seen as pure and the most innocent. A lot of religious affiliations utilize the color white, again, to mean the sort of like holy or pureness. Even when we think of architecture, so white marble, neoclassical architecture, which a lot of churches embodied since the 18th century, even government buildings, especially in the US, that is considered neoclassical, right? All sort of use this idea of the color white as a common color. And often it's also used now in kind of 20th century modern architecture as a symbol of modernity and simplicity. Yeah, it's a color most often associated, at least in Europe and the United States, with perfection, goodness, honesty, cleanliness, the beginning, the new, neutrality, and exactitude. And like I said, it's an important color for a lot of the world's religions. Often folks dress in white. It's the most common color for wedding dresses in Western cultures and in Japan, symbolizing purity or historically virginity. It's interesting though, because white is also sometimes the color of mourning. I think of white flowers associated with funerals. And also in a lot of Asian cultures, white is the color of mourning there. So yeah, kind of interesting. It has a lot of ties towards, again, this like purity, holiness idea. And again, probably because of the fact that the color white reflects all wavelengths of color. So again, in a lot of ways, like it is this sort of represents the whole. When we think about it in color magic, so on, we think again of kind of purity, protection, truth, meditation, peace, sincerity, justice, and to ward doubt and fear. And I pulled that from rachelpatterson.co.uk, talking about color magic. On my days of the week correspondences, we associate white with Monday as the moon's day and lunar deities. It's associated with magic, dealing with cooking, dreams, family, the home, intuition, medicine, spiritual growth, and the ocean. And when we think of color symbolism in tarot, the color white, if we think about, at least in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck that was created by the art of Pamela Coleman Smith and the ideas of Arthur White, weight. The color meanings, right, like weren't arbitrarily decided, right? The color meanings already existed in sort of collective consciousness and cultural meanings in our society. So if we think of the color white, it's illustrative of how we all kind of know what white symbolizes, maybe even if we haven't thought about it before. Again, when do people wear white? We think of baptisms, first communions, weddings, again, a lot of religious ties. We think of white buildings as sort of being about, again, like foundational things. Again, I think sort of ideally in both religious and government buildings, the sense of like purity or wholeness, and white is a color considered of purity, innocence, cleansing, and rebirth. So if we think about white as symbols in tarot, there's sort of two cards that they talk about in this article, and this is from the tarotprofessor.com, talking about color symbolism in tarot. We actually think about the death card because in the death card, death marches in on a white horse. This shows that death is natural and pure and necessary for rebirth, even though, of course, in last episode, when I talk about the color black, we also talk about that black is also a color associated with death, the tower, the devil in tarot, and it is on the death card, but again, it's sort of, we also have white used as a symbol there. In the temperance card, we think of temperance often wearing a white robe. Temperance is about maintaining purity through balance and knowing that you have everything you need within you to manifest your desires. Again, this sort of like wholeness idea. And there's a purity and innocence that comes with the understanding, since it requires that we, again, with balance and knowing everything you need, we break down our walls, releasing limiting beliefs and complexes, and really getting back to source, spirit, or the true self. Temperance's white robe helps us to get that meaning. And again, if she were wearing a red or black or a different color robe, the card would have a very different vibe. And again, I talk about some of these other colors in tarot, so stay tuned, as this whole season is about color. I pulled, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to share about from there. I don't think so. So I pulled some tarot cards from some of my decks that use the symbolism of white, or the white color. So I pulled from 3 different decks. In the Herb Crafters tarot deck, I pulled the plants of yarrow, datura, and valerian, all things that have white flowers. Yarrow can be has multiple types of yarrow that are different colors, but often has white. And so yarrow is associated in this deck with the ace of air, which would be like the ace of swords. Datura is associated with the moon, right? So we have the moon sort of subconscious. Again, when we literally look at the moon, it looks white because it's being reflected by the sun. And then valerian is the 8 of water, which would be the 8 of cups equivalent. And just through this, again, we have datura with the moon. Datura is a very highly psychedelic plant and is a white flower that's very beautiful. Yarrow is associated with like a lot of healing. It's a delicate flower. And valerian has sort of the it's often taken at nighttime for a sort of like sedative effect. And I feel like all of these, there is again this sense of like holiness, right? We have the sort of like plant medicine aspect of it. We have the sort of like mental plane, datura plant, very strong plant. And then we have the sort of like healing, almost like cleansing aspect that comes along with yarrow. Other cards I pulled from different decks. I pulled the Maiden of Cups, which would be like the Page of Cups from the Goddess of Love tarot deck. I pulled this one because it has pearls on it and like a white seashell. We also see the Maiden has like white crowns on her head and pearls. And I was going to read a bit from this card's description, because again, I think it goes along a lot with the idea of the color white. A maiden of cups, the goddess of spring, abundant, fecund, afraid of the expressions, longings, and yearnings of her heart, right? Again, cups are sort of our emotion card, the wateriness element. It's a card of immense vulnerability and honesty when it comes to expressing what you're feeling. It says, when you pull the Maiden of Cups, step into this open and sensuous expression of self. Don't listen to fear, but be led by the love within. Consider if there's someone you know who embodies this energy, someone you can turn to in support of your experience, a mirror to your own ability to love ceaselessly. So again, it is this sort of like love of self, love of the whole, like all the parts of ourselves, being led by love, guided by love, and it has a lot of that energy of the card. Again, this sort of like also like maiden, fertility, again, purity sort of aspects. And then finally I pulled from 2 cards from the Norse Goddess Rune Oracle. So, technically not tarot, but I pulled 2 different cards that sort of have goddesses in white in them. So one of them is Purzaz Merkstoff is the rune, and the goddess Rinder. So this one is kind of interesting. So she's wearing a white dress and holding a baby. In this myth, I'm trying to remember here, I'm looking at the book. I think let's see. Yeah, so she has this sort of, she has a child, and it gets related to Odin. She rejects Odin, and he sort of curses her with madness. And causes her to get pregnant. She bears him a son, Vali, who grows to be a man within a day and avenges Baldar by slaying his brother Hodor. So I was just thinking of, right, we have this sort of purity of like the baby that is born. Even though this card is about more aggression, conflict, and trouble, there's this prophecy, there's this like sort of like pure maiden. And then because of the myth, she sort of births this child that then like avenges her. And I don't know, there's something about that sort of, again, like what happens when you mess with kind of like purity and innocence, and kind of like the karma that comes along with that. The other card I pulled is Berkana, the birch goddess associated with growth, birth, and renewal. So again, it's literally a birch tree, or she looks sort of like a birch tree, which is that like white peeling bark. If you've ever seen it, it's kind of like underneath it's darker, but it has this peeling white bark. Birch is the first growth in spring. The goddess here, it says, I am birch goddess, the first growth in spring. I am the mother, new life do I bring. Nurturing, healing, growth in many ways. May Berkana bring blessings for all of your days. Again, personification of the birch tree, blossoming with new life. Loving mother, providing new growth and nourishing, and a beloved tree of the fairies who encircle her in a fairy mushroom ring. Sort of like synonymous with Mother Earth. Again, like we have the whiteness of the tree itself, this representation of new life and growth, sort of like fertility, which again is often also associated with like maidens, right? Like we have the Maiden of Cups from earlier, growth, fertility, peace, laying down of weapons in this way. Yeah, I think that's all I want to, and she is shaped like a pregnant mother, which alludes obviously to birth, pregnancy, and then like rebirth in the spiritual sense. This rune, Berkana is the female fertility rune, encompasses the blessings of pregnancy, birth, and healing qualities of the nourishment shared between mother and baby. It says, spend time on your own well-being, show love to your inner child, and nourish your body and soul. Now is the time for growth. The dormant caterpillar felt trapped by its cocoon is now ready to emerge as the beautiful butterfly, right? So it's also about this kind of like all the possibilities that could happen, which again, I think is sort of what often the color white is about. All right, let's go ahead and pull a card on how can we work with the color white today. And like I said, in the color correspondences aspect, I use that and I wear white on Mondays to celebrate the moon, which I greatly enjoy. So we also have the sort of moon, right? The feminine, if the sun is seen as the sort of masculine side, the like yin and yang aspect of it. The moon is seen as the sort of feminine divine, right? Associated with like the ocean and tides and subconscious, the moon and tarot. And like I said, the Datura moon card that I pulled here is also very kind of affiliated in this way of the mind. So let's go ahead and pull a card. I'm going to use the Citadel, a fantasy oracle deck by Fen Inkwright, because I really like this deck. Utilizes black and white, honestly, as symbols, as sort of the backgrounds on here. So I also pulled from this one last episode, and maybe I'll pull from it in the future too, because it also has red as the other sort of like accent color. So most of the cards on the front are white background with black ink, and then black or red ink, and then they have sort of like gold foil on them. And the backs of the cards are black background with white ink, and then inside like the drawing of the middle of the card, you see the Citadel, which is a white background with black ink. So there's a lot of the contrast colors coming in with this deck. So it's hard to talk about white as symbolism in this deck because it's all white and black. Okay, I pulled the Captain, which is about taking command and teamwork. I don't pull this one very often. Let's see here. So if we think about, right, how do we work with the color white today? The Captain. So the Captain depicts a friendly call, a grin, a warm handshake. The Captain passes in the street with their men, the playful jostling of armored guardsmen reminiscent of a tussling pack of littermates. In the center of it all, the Captain commands their followers with ease, confident in their position, well aware of the loyalty and love they inspire. They have earned this position through hard work and camaraderie. It may feel safer to attempt a task alone, but some things are easier with a little teamwork. Don't ignore the talents of those around you. You need the experience and diversity of others to accomplish your goal. Be the driving force that's needed to get things done, but be sure to acknowledge the value that each person brings to the table. Right, so again, if we think about the color white as including reflecting all spectrums of light, right, it doesn't sort of absorb anything, right? It takes everything that it gets and reflects it back to others, which it's saying, like, I feel that it's related to this because it's saying, right, you need all of the different colors, all of the different wavelengths, right, to sort of like equal the color white, and you can't take any of those out. Like the color white, right, reflects back the sort of beauty that it sees, right? And in this way, this card is saying, right, like, don't ignore the talents of those around you. Actually, you need the diversity, right, of color, metaphorically, and experience of others to accomplish your goals. So you can't just work alone because you'll be missing out on these other spectrums or aspects that could be, yeah, that could, again, if you think of like all of the wavelengths of light being reflected back from the color white, right? It's like the rainbow aspects. And so we wouldn't be as like depth. We wouldn't have the depth. We wouldn't have the experience or breadth of understanding if we don't sort of take in everyone's consideration. And again, these are people that you want to work with, right? Like this is the captain if you're captaining your ship, right? You're not going to just let anyone on your ship. You're going to decide who are the best people for the job, and then we all have to work together, right, to make sure the ship doesn't sink, which is, you know, generally the goal. Also deliver the goods, right? But to make sure that like everyone gets acknowledged, right? A captain is essentially a very good manager. And they have to make sure that everyone works well together, because also like if you don't work well together, like, yeah, things are not going to mesh. And again, you're all potentially at risk. And the card actually depicts like two people shaking hands, and then we see lanterns in the background and actually sort of a starry night there. So it's like the light, right, is even in this card itself, all about teamwork. And again, sort of understanding that you are one part of a whole system. And so we can't ignore the other parts and how they might benefit the whole in that way. All right. If you'd like to join me on the journey of using the tarot for transformation, click on the link in the show notes to indicate your interest, and I'll send you more info. You don't have to commit. There's no commitment at this level. I'll just be sending more information about when the calls are going to be, what to expect, how to sign up, etc. Links for the tarot decks I talk about will always be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday, for all of 2025. You can email me, me@CamilleSaunders.com, with your thoughts, questions, and more. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.